like whether you'll cut something down, or is it more about promoting future logging in this area?
Well, so what I have when I embark on a timber harvest, each of these stands we have delineated and stratified different timber types or stand types based on species composition and stocking today. And each stand has enough representative plots where we have these 5th acre plots. We measure every single thing. We do fuel loading. We do species diversity. In some cases, we do things like height to live crown base and other metrics of how actually healthy individual trees are. And from that, I kind of know based on what acres I'm looking at, what is the current square feet of basal area per acre, which is basically the coverage of wood volume on that acre, and how is it distributed across diameter classes.
Wow.
2-inch diameter classes. So I kind of know, I have a stand. Usually it's kind of like a bell curve.
Yeah.
I have a stand size class distribution, and I know based on what volume I think is sustainably removable, what proportion, so what percentage of each 2-inch diameter class I would like to remove in this entry to put to do the management that I have modeled, that is replicatable every 15 years. And so I know that I want to remove 35% of the trees between 24 and 30 inches, and 40% of the trees between 30 inches and 48 inches. And we have a across the board restriction on cutting trees over 60 inches. So we have these wildlife recruitment trees throughout the working forest and around, and those, and in the watercourse and lake protection zones, they're growing to be over 60 inches, and they just, depending if they're in those watercourse zones, we're always thinning from below. But in the matrix of the working forest, we're not harvesting trees over 60 inches.
Wow.
But we like to grow them up to that, because one of the real valuable parts of redwood is the heartwood, the pink dyed center of the tree that is packed with tannins. And the reason that's the more valuable part is because it's the rot resistant part of the tree, and is valued, partly hugely for its aesthetics, but also for its outdoor applications in spas and benches and fences and things like that.
Even in indoor applications, if you've got a lot of sapwood, it's not as marketable a piece of
Right.
lumber.
Right. And so the proportion of heartwood to sapwood is really has a lot to do with the age of the tree. And so you are putting on a lot more heartwood if you grow your trees to be bigger and older. And so that's essentially the goal.
Could I ask those percentages once again? You mentioned.
Oh, I just kind of pulled those out. But yeah, so I said, I think that 30, was talking
said
about 24 to 30 inch trees, and I said 35%.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about 30 inch to 48 inch trees, and I said a higher number. But before I said that about 25% or 20 to 25% of the trees over 12 inches are removed.
Right.
And that's kind of the guiding number. But I do know the current stand composition based on those plots, but also just based on my, I do a lot of refining my ocular estimation capabilities in this job.
I bet.
And I have a bunch of tools in my truck that I can get out of how I measure trees. When I'm marking trees, every single tree that I will put a blue stripe of death on when I'm marking it will, I'll measure its 2-inch diameter class, and I'll tally it. And that helps me come up with an accurate volume, but to relate to the landowner, because they keenly want to know that, and to relate to the logger, and to relate to anyone who's going to bid on buying the logs. And around here we have Big Creek Lumber Company. They're the last remaining mill in this area. And I worked for Big Creek Lumber Company for 10 years. I'm a huge fan of their style of management. They are FSC certified, Forest Stewardship Council certified, which doesn't really mean anything in the marketplace, but it means a lot in terms of how they conduct their business. And not being all about the bottom line and really being out about it for the long haul. And the single tree selection rules that we work with in what we call the Southern Subject District of the Coast District, forest practice rules. I probably have a rule book in my truck too. It's like 350 pages. It's, you know, the prescriptive rules that we follow to do timber harvesting in
Is it for the state of
the
California?
state of California.
Yeah.
And California has a registered professional forester's license, which I have. And Michigan, like almost no other states, really have that kind of threshold to be able to, you know, practice forestry. And where was I going with that? Big Creek pioneered the single tree selection rules that we have here. They were around during the clear cutting days. A bunch of their company land was previously owned by Pacific Lumber Company up by the Pescadero watershed. It was completely clear cut. Big Creek saw the light. They were like, if we want to do this sustainably as a family business for long term, we need to stop this boom bust clear cut cycle. And so they wrote the rules. The Central Coast Timber Operators Association, which was essentially them and their management, wrote the rules for single tree selection. And it applies, and it's the only silviculture, which is basically, silviculture is a forestry word. It means the science and art of harvesting trees. And they wrote those rules that apply to Santa Cruz, San Mateo, and Santa Clara counties. And that's been in place since the late 70s.
So I used to live up in the northern end of the state where Pacific Lumber Company did
It-
exactly what you're talking about
Yes.
here, until, you know, some idiot bought them out with junk bonds. And
Right.
they have now clear cut.
Maxim.
They had the most incredible, they had that whole philosophy, and they had a company town. They were sending their kids to college. They
Right.
had lumber that would provide builders, you know, clear, beautiful old growth material ad infinitum. And they have just erased that
Yeah.
from the whole North Coast.
Yeah, there's been a real consolidation of lumber companies in
Yeah,
the state in like the
unfortunately.
last 15 years. Before that, but like I've witnessed it in the last 15 years, and it's really scary. When I graduated from Berkeley, where I went and studied forest management, I went to work at Berkeley's Research Forest in the Sierra Nevada, and all around there is Sierra Pacific Industries. And Sierra Pacific Industries, Red Emerson, their owner, is the largest landowner in the country. And what they do, I'll talk a little shit, is, sorry, I can't help it. They manage 5 species mixed conifer, you know, Douglas fir, white fir, incense cedar, sugar pine, and ponderosa pine. And they only plant ponderosa pine. And it's because ponderosa pine, that's the wood that they want, you know, they've got their window and door shops and it's, yeah, it's, but like, talk about putting all your eggs in one basket, you know, if you had a disease, you know, our tan oak is being obliterated by sudden oak death. I think it's only a matter of time until the area we're standing in has massive sign of sudden oak death. It's on this property, you know, it's expanding. I think, you know, warm, wet springs like the one we're in the middle of are just going to cause that pathogen to go crazy. I only bring that up because if you plant only one species and that species begins to succumb to something, maybe something foreign, look out because the balance is off.
The potato famine. Yeah.
Right.
And monoculture in
Yeah.
general.
So there's fewer and fewer lumber companies, like more consolidated ownerships, and the style of management is a little,
It's corporate.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
that- same in medicine. So
Yeah.
that tan oak back there,
Yeah.
before it dies, that's a valuable tree.
isn't it though? Yeah,
There's some.
there
get it
are.
Before the SOD gets it.
Well, yeah. So we do, right. So we manage tan oak. One of the treatments up there, I was talking about the impaired forest condition class of mature oak woodland. One of the impaired forest condition classes is like tan oak